the dark.
All right, joining us now to try and shed a little bit of light on how the situation could pan out is sports finance expert and lecturer at Liverpool University, Kieran Maguire. Kieran, lovely to have you on the show with us. Now, as we just heard there's a lot of uncertainty in the long run about this issue, but what sort of immediate impact could we see on UK sports?
Well, there's nothing going to happen for at least 2 years because Article 50 has to be enacted, and then certainly new legislation would have to be introduced. So initially, existing EU law would apply to the UK. I think the big thing which we have noticed over the course of the last 12 months is because of the fall in the value of the pound, overseas players have become more expensive and English football clubs have become more attractive to foreign investors because of the fall in sterling.
So you've written quite a few articles about the rising cost for football, possibly post Brexit. But do you think that we're more likely to see impacting the bigger clubs or the clubs farther down on the pyramid?
I think that the bigger clubs are simply just going to have to accept that they're going to have to go and pay larger prices for players. I think there's going to be caution further down the leagues because under existing legislation, if you want to sign a player who is not from the European area, then that's going to be based on his FIFA ranking of his host country and the number of caps that he held. Now, if those rules are then applied to EU players once Brexit takes place, then we could see a substantial reduction in the number of players, certainly in leagues such as the Championship and also in Scotland.
Well, we always love to talk about football. There are, of course, many other sports that we should be considering. How could they all be impacted by this?
They should be relatively protected, I would feel, because if you take a look at the major sports which exist in the UK, such as rugby and cricket, we've got existing CalPAC arrangements in respect of cricket, and the rugby union and rugby league players would tend to come from Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, places such as those, and there haven't been problems in the past in terms of recruiting players of that nature.
Okay, so it's not necessarily doom and gloom. And going back to football, for example, and talking about the international talent, this is a really good opportunity then for those nations to really develop homegrown talent instead of looking abroad, for example.
In theory, it is. I think the trouble is that fans and chairmen of football clubs are very, very impatient. So therefore, what they will do is that they simply want to get results and results now. Realistically, it's going to take a number of years to develop more youth-orientated players coming through into the first team squads of Premier League clubs. And ultimately, if a player is good enough, he will be in the first team squad regardless of his nationality. So I think it's more of a reflection of the fact that England isn't really producing players of a standard quality that's going to make managers want to put them in the squads.
And we heard a little bit, earlier about hosting large events such as the Champions League final this year. It's going to be in Cardiff. But what about in the future? Do you really see that being a problem with Brexit?
No, it shouldn't be a problem at all because UEFA exists for both EU and non-EU countries. When they allocate the stadia for hosting major events, that tends to be completely disregarded in terms of membership of the European Union. So I can't see a problem there. I think there's going to be sort of broader issues coming out of Brexit for things such as the Bosman ruling, because once the UK comes out of the EU, then of course European law won't apply, and what's going to happen to a Bosman signing? Will that mean that players effectively become enslaved to clubs as they were pre-Bosman?
Great, well thank you very much, Kieran. Now Brazil have beaten